Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
Well, the Halloween season is upon us.
It's so exciting.
Oh my God.
I love it so much.
Times like this, I wish I were back in America every single time. Just for this 1 month, if I could just have Halloween.
I know. You say for just this 1 month, but honestly, Todd, I don't know why it is, but Halloween is having like a moment and people are getting so into it that it's starting in like late August. Like,
oh my God.
Like people are getting so excited for spooky season so early. And then like by the very beginning of September, streaming services were already featuring like their spooky stuff and their horror stuff. And it's brilliant.
You're trying to depress me, aren't you?
I'm not trying to depress you. I just want you to know how happy it makes me. Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I've got all the fall stuff out in my house, and it's my favorite time of the year.
Is Spirit Halloween already open in a bunch of places?
I don't know. I'm not, my town's not big enough for a Spirit Halloween, so I don't know about that. But.
You get a trip down the road a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, Spirit Halloween always feels to me like a little bit of a cop-out. Like, we didn't have that growing up, right? There was no big, giant Halloween store that would pop up around the country when we were kids. You had to go to the mall and go to the Walmart or whatever. And
well, sometimes something would pop up in one of those empty spaces in the mall, like just
rare
around Halloween, and it would be exclusively like costumes and stuff like that, but not all the time. I've never been to a Spirit Halloween. I don't have any idea what they are like on the inside. I know what the logo looks like. I know what it looks like slapped on a big abandoned warehouse, but
right.
I've never been in one.
It's an interesting business model, that place. I didn't even get it, like how do these just happen? When I first saw them, I thought they were some one guy's kind of like thing that he just did in this one place, and then I noticed, other towns had them too. And then I realized it's this big intra-national thing. And it's this whole business. And it's so cyclical. And it's so weird how they just find places to pop up that are empty. And the last time I was back for Halloween, which was 2 years ago, I guess, I went to one of these places with Kenji. And I was kind of blown away. I was like, man, their selection has grown. Like they have things that they clearly have made specifically for them, exclusive to them. Animatronics that you can like put in your yard and at your house and on your door. And I mean, it's kind of elaborate. I was impressed, but all that shit just sounds expensive to me. When I was a kid, we made our own stuff.
Right. And then what do you do with it for the rest of the year? Like
exactly.
Home Depot is selling those enormous skeletons, which are great. And I think they're, fun, but they're like 20 feet tall or something. Like, where do you put that for the rest of the year?
I know, right?
Gosh, I don't know. One might think that we were talking about the movie Spirit Halloween, but we're not.
Thank God. I heard it's bad.
I heard it's bad too. I haven't seen it.
We'll cover it one of these years.
I was really surprised you didn't put it on the list. I thought for sure you would, but
let's get these other ones out of the way first, shall we?
Well, I think that the ones that you picked are really good if we stick to the plan. I think all but one of the ones that we have planned are family-friendly movies.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that so much. I think it's, gosh, I don't have kids of my own. I've got nieces and nephews, and like my cousins have kids that call me uncle and stuff. But I think what a better way to spend, if you're a big fan of like if you're a grown-up and you're a big fan of the holiday season, what better way to celebrate it than to share it with your family, your kids, young people in your life?
Yes.
These movies are going to be a lot of fun to talk about.
Well, and we talk about these kind of movies as gateway horror, family-friendly, kid-friendly movies that are still scary enough, but not really, that you can watch with a younger child, but an older child and adult will enjoy it as well. I think of Halloween as sort of a gateway horror holiday anyway,
Yeah.
It's probably, I would imagine, where if not many of us, picked up our love for horror, the horror genre in general.
Oh, at least in part, sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's what got me into spooky stuff. That's what got me into spooky music and movies and books and all that. I would say probably, at least like you said, a very large contributor to it. And nowadays, Halloween is springing up around the world like it wasn't even 10, 20 years ago. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I could say from experience that when I was living and teaching in Japan in the early 2000s, 2001 to 2004, I was introducing Halloween to my students. I did a big unit during October where we would talk about Halloween traditions in America, and I would dress up, for that last week, and I would encourage the kids to dress up. In our English club, we would have Halloween parties, and I'd organize like bobbing for apples and other disgusting stuff like that. And now, the last time I went to Japan in October, which was just a couple years ago, it's a thing there. They're almost as big on Halloween as we are in the States now.
You did it.
I saw Halloween everywhere. Yeah, it was me. I planted the seed. You're all welcome, everyone. And it grew. Mission accomplished. Yay me. So I feel like even our international listeners, if by now have probably know a lot more about the Halloween holiday than they would have 10, 20 years ago, and can probably relate to some of these movies, because some of the movies we've picked are very Halloween specific. This one is not. This one is the 2015 film Goosebumps, based on the Goosebumps series of books. It's so funny because we've been talking about Christopher Pike a lot, because we have this ongoing Christopher Pike book club now since we did the Midnight Club and all that. We did at least 1 or 2 minisodes about some Christopher Pike related stuff for our patrons. And so I'm really in that mind space. Like, you and I are now reading a Christopher Pike book like all the time now. We're on what?
Yeah.
The 6th or 7th one, I think.
I have no idea. A lot. We tried to figure this out yesterday. We were thinking more like 9 or 10. Anyway.
I think you're right. But like, that's in my headspace now recently, and it kind of brings me back to when I was an adolescent. And R.L. Stine and the Goosebumps were just a little too young for me when they came out. But I just remember at the time thinking of them as, this is like the Christopher Pike for the young kids. So I never read a single Goosebumps book, but they were huge, like absolutely huge. And my understanding is they were huge around the world. They were translated into like 35 different languages. I've talked to people I know from other countries who've said, oh yeah, I read some of those books when I was growing up too. So major international phenomenon. I was surprised to learn the second best selling book series of all time.
After Harry Potter?
Yeah. Crazy.
Wow.
400 or 450 million copies sold around the world and counting, and Harry Potter's up to 600 million. It's just nuts.
Jack Black, who plays R.L. Stine in the movie, says something really early on.
You're him, aren't you? You're R.L. Stine.
R.L. who? I don't know who that is.
Oh, really? Well, just as well, because his books suck.
What are you doing?
I can't decide which one I hate more, Monster Blood or Go Eat Worms.
I'm so confused.
You see the endings coming from a mile away. It's like, stop trying to be Stephen King, man.
Let me tell you something about Steve King. Steve King wishes he could write like me, and I've sold way more books than him, but nobody ever talks about that!
Okay.
Way more books!
And I thought, that can't be true. So I immediately looked it up, and it is. What?
That's crazy. By a margin of like 100 million.
Yeah, it blew my mind, but then I thought about it, and I thought, wait a second. Stephen King, as prolific as he is, and he's very prolific, putting out like a book a year, I don't know, because I didn't follow the Goosebumps thing either. We had book club yesterday, and we talked about this, and they were all shocked. They're all, one of them is exactly my age, and the rest of them are about 5 years younger than me, so I think that it just... you and I just missed it. Like, it was just too young for us.
Mm-hmm. Just barely.
So anybody even, some people even just like 5 years younger than us who are into the same types of things that we were, like, this was touchstone for them. And they were shocked that I had never read a single R.L. Stine book either.
You too, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, not a single one. And I remember overlooking them because... I read mostly mostly Christopher Pike, but not exclusively. There were some other adolescent teen authors that I read occasionally, but I always looked at the Goosebumps books, and even just the way that they were published, they looked like kids' books. They were made like kids' books.
Yeah.
They weren't your standard novel size. They were larger, and the print was larger.
They were shorter, for sure.
They were shorter, and the artwork on the front, I really enjoyed it. I looked at it because it was fun to look at, but it looked more like it was for kids. And the subject matter looked more like it was for kids, like the blob that ate everyone. And the titles sounded like they were meant for younger kids. Ultimately, I'm a little disappointed that I didn't pick them up back then, because I think that I probably would have been pleasantly surprised. But anyway, coming into this movie, I had seen it before. I didn't realize how old it was. Gosh, time goes by so quickly when you're an adult.
It's true.
I would have told you probably this movie came out 4 or 5 years ago. It's been almost 10 years. So I had forgotten about that. But I know that I had seen it before, but I remembered nothing about it. And I always think, like, that can't be a good sign. Like, if you saw it and you remember nothing about it, that can't be a good sign. But I was watching it yesterday, and I really enjoyed it. Like, it's not specifically centered around Halloween, but it feels like a Halloween movie.
Yes.
Ironically enough, there's a sequel to it that is about Halloween. Like, Halloween is in the title.
Yeah.
But I don't know anything about it, whether it's good or not. But I sat and watched this, and I really liked it. And it felt more like kids' horror movies from when we were younger that they don't really make. It was still anymore.
Yeah.
It was still maybe a little bit tamer, but it felt like the Monster Squad or...
Yeah, where kids are battling against monsters, that are in their neighborhood.
Right, and like action heavy and not terribly scary, but...
No.
Like it kept you on your edge of your seat and like the action sequences and stuff. And it is action heavy with like car chases and big monsters, running around destroying the town and like a whole horde of monsters. Like, there's a lot going on in this movie.
Yeah. It's got a madcap pace that kind of just never stops.
Yeah.
But also it's very inoffensive. Nobody dies.
No.
You never feel like anyone's ever going to die or be hurt in any way. Like, it just has that tone of, all right, this is like a quote-unquote safe kids movie.
Right.
My 7-year-old son might be scared by a few things in here, but not because there are horrible things happening, just because the monsters might be a little scary, and he'll think about them later,
Look a little scary, sure.
Yeah,
Right. But I was also thinking, I wonder... I can only imagine that if you were a fan of the books, that this would be just glorious. Like,
right.
Because it references a countless number of his books. And I read that people had been interested in an R.L. Stine movie for a long time, but I think R.L. Stine said, like, there were so many books that they didn't know where to start or which one to choose. And at different points in time, different projects were being talked about. Like, at one point, Tim Burton was toying with doing something with R.L. Stine. George Romero wrote a script for an adaptation of one of his books. Can you imagine?
I know, right?
What?
Of course, it was one that involved zombies. I read a little synopsis of what it was supposed to be. It was like the first one, Welcome to the Dead House or something, which involves zombies, I suppose. And George Romero wrote this thing where, eventually the neighborhood's going to be taken over by zombies and whatnot. And that would be interesting to see him doing a children's movie like that. Did he ever do a children's movie? I somewhere in my head, I'm thinking he did something childlike, but I don't remember.
I don't know.
Part of the genius, I guess, of this movie is that it takes the same approach that the Alone in the Dark movie did, in that it's not about any one book. And so it's basically about the fictionalized R.L. Stine and him writing these books. And in this world, his books are dangerous, the books themselves.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant conceit. I love it. Well, we should talk about it when we get
there. But so that's why this book, this movie took so long to come out, is because everybody was fretting over which book to do, and none of them could really agree or figure out a good story for a full-length movie based on any one of these short books. So I like that aspect to it too. I think Jack Black is always fun and great in the stuff he's in. And like you, unlike you, I'd never seen this movie before. But like you, I jumped into it knowing full well what it was. I was not disappointed by it. And I was kind of along for the ride and not at all scared ever, but enjoying myself nonetheless. And what better movie to put you in the Halloween spirit, than something like this. So.
And it's fun and funny and it's shot well. One of my only complaints, and it's like, who cares? The CGI is a little iffy in places.
It's a little dated, yeah.
And it's pretty it's CGI heavy. So that was a little disappointing, but get over it. Like,
yeah.
Okay, great. It doesn't look that great, but just enjoy it for what it is.
Hey, if we can handle choppy stop motion animation from an earlier day and grubby prosthetic effects and things like that, this we can handle crummy CGI, I suppose. Less than perfect CGI, let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's pretty to look at, and it's got really good people in it, people that you will recognize, not necessarily like huge A-list stars, but I recognize so many people in this movie, and it's funny. So it's got a lot going for it out of the gate.
It does.
It's this story about, okay, so it starts out, I don't know if now we have to say every aerial shot of a car driving down a road is an homage to The Shining. I have no idea, but that's how it starts. An aerial shot of a car driving into this small town,
So typical.
dragging a U-Haul.
Classic horror movie setup.
Exactly. Oh, we're moving to a new place, right? Okay, great. So it's Zach, played by Dylan Minnette, who was in, I think he's most famous for like the 13 Reasons Why series, which I haven't seen, but he was also in one of the new Screams that I think you and I talked about. I don't remember. And his mom, single mom. I don't know if did the dad die? I don't remember.
I think that, we never get it clearly said to us, but it seems like he did. The way that they're kind of like staring at his picture and his son is looking at old videos of him, it seems more like he died rather than he left.
Yeah, single mom Gail, played by Amy Ryan, who was great in The Office, and she was also in Only Murders in the Building. She's so funny. She doesn't have a huge role here, but I'm a big fan of hers. So they move into this big house in this little small town, and it looks, like Grover's Corners, like like every backlot small town set you've ever seen.
By the way, did it strike you that this beautiful house on this street was impossibly large for these two people?
It's always that.
Always like that, right?
These huge houses.
You're a school teacher. Do you think that an assistant principal at the local public school would be able to afford a house like this?
Oh gosh, no, especially now. Like that house would be over $1 million.
Oh yeah, got it.
Oh gosh. Okay, but right away Zach sees somebody next door like close the blinds really fast or something, and then he meets the guy next door, Jack Black, who introduces himself as Mr. Shivers, but he's R.L. Stine.
Right.
And there's an Aunt Lorraine who is played by Jillian Bell, who I recognized just last year. There was a new Christmas movie starring Eddie Murphy called Candy Cane Lane, and she's the funny antagonist in it. And that's a really cute movie. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it this Christmas time.
Okay.
We also meet a young girl, apparently Zach's age, Hannah, played by Odea York. I didn't really recognize her from anything, but there's obviously a connection between these young people right away, and they're going to be little cute love interests or whatever. But R.L. Stine warns Zach.
Do you see the fence?
Yes.
Stay on your side of it. You stay away from my daughter. You stay away from me. We won't have a problem.
Multiple times.
If I'm being totally honest, I'm a big Jack Black fan. I think that he's a hilarious actor, and he seems to be a really cool, genuinely good guy in real life. I just wasn't feeling his choices in this movie, and that's just a personal opinion. I read somewhere that Jim Carrey was at one point in time considered for the role. I'm not as big a fan of Jim Carrey as I am of Jack Black, but R.L. Stine, the actual man, makes a cameo in the end of this movie, and Jim Carrey looks like him.
He would have kind of nailed it a little bit, yeah. The best that Jack Black can do is some dark glasses, some dark rimmed glasses. And he's affecting what he said was more of an Orson Welles type of approach. And it does. He sounds like he's affecting a kind of Orson Welles accent. And it's fine. But you're right. It's nothing special, I guess. It's not particularly endearing or funny. It's just kind of vanilla. I don't know. What can you say about it?
Yeah. He made a choice, and that's fine. It's just I didn't particularly care for it. And then there's also, the mom is the vice principal at the school, and the son goes to school and meets people and stuff, and he meets this dorky kid named Champ, who's played by this kid named Ryan Lee, who was doing a lot of work at this time and just before. He was in a hilarious TV show with Malin Ackerman called Trophy Wife, which got canceled after one season, and I was so mad because it was hilarious.
Oh.
Bradley Whitford was in it. Gosh, some other really good people were in it. Oh, it was so funny. Alan and I liked it so much, and it got canceled. He was in that, and he was doing a lot of other work as a kid. I don't know if he's still doing a lot of work now, but he's really funny. He's so funny.
He was in Black Friday, which was one of our holiday picks. Was it last year or the year before?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He played one of the employees in
the store. Yeah, whatever it was. So I guess what? Zach and Hannah, though they've been forbidden to see each other,
immediately see each other.
Yeah. She doesn't go to school with them, and she's like, what's high school really like or something? And he's like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I'm homeschooled. Okay, whatever. But she's like, come on, let me show you something. And they go out into the woods.
Behind their house.
Behind their house, I guess, which like overlooks the whole town. Like, it's gorgeous. And there's an abandoned carnival out there. And it's apparently been abandoned for a long time. He's like, whoa, what's this place? And she's like, oh, they built it a long time ago, but then they ran out of money. But then she goes on to like flip a switch on a generator, and like the whole place lights up. The whole thing.
As improbable as this little abandoned carnival in the middle of the woods right behind their house with a giant Ferris wheel that goes up above the tall treetops and this cool
and it's like her
house.
Secret place.
Yeah, right. Like as cool as that is, as unlikely as that was, I would have loved to have that to explore as a kid.
Oh my gosh, it's an amazing set piece. Like there's like a fun house, and it's really fun. And for a movie like this, it's a great set piece, and they return to it later, but they have a cute little moment or whatever. And I don't really remember. So I guess when they come home, they get caught. Is that what happens?
No, when they come home, she just goes into her house. He's sleeping, and he wakes up to hear arguing across the way. And when he looks out the window, he sees the shadow of her and her dad, R.L. Stine, and she screams. And he panics. He thinks that maybe she's in trouble, and he runs over there and bangs on the door. Doesn't really get a response, and then ends up calling the cops.
Yeah, and these dumb cops come over.
Oh my God, the cop thing was so stupid. Like, look, I don't have high expectations for this movie being particularly clever, witty, or realistic. I know they're throwing in a lot of slapstick and a lot of these jokes, and it's a very kid-type humor with a lot of this stuff. But those cops were just almost offensively dumb. I mean, come on. The woman whips her...
One of them is so stupid.
The guy opens the door, and she whips her gun out and says, freeze! And the cop's like, calm down. I'm sorry. She's our cop in training right now. No, we don't need guns at this point, ma'am. I'm like, oh, my God.
And the kid says he heard a scream, and Jack Black shows them a TV with, like, I don't know, like he's watching a horror movie, and a girl screams. I don't know if one of them says, why is it so loud? And he says... I'm sorry, is it against the law to be an audiophile? And she, like, freaks out and rips out her gun. Oh, what a file!
Like he insulted her?
No, like she thought he...
pedophile.
Yeah, like... She didn't know what the word meant.
Right.
Because she's a dummy. Like, that's the whole gag. She's a big dumb dummy.
Not only a big dumb dummy, but a big dumb dummy who just is going to whip out her gun at every small infraction.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
So stupid.
But he says Hannah's not even there. He says she flew back to London.
He said that she's visiting him, like, because she's on holiday from her
mother's
mother.
Getting remarried or something? I don't know. So he says she's gone. The cops leave. But then... Zach sees him arguing with somebody again in there. So he calls Champ over and lies and says they're going to go to the dance. By the way, this is the night of the dance.
That's so funny, right?
Yeah.
Because like they're making this big deal about the dance, and Zach has no indication of he's going to go to this dance at all.
No. Well, I mean, they just got there. He doesn't know anything. I don't know.
Guess,
anyway,
but his mom's got to go there and like chaperone the thing.
Yeah.
There's like no mention made of it except that she says to somebody, "Well, I got to go chaperone the dance now."
Also, are they having a dance on like the first weekend of school? Like, didn't school just start?
I think so. Yeah, like the first night.
Back to school dance.
I guess so.
It's formal.
That good old fall dance that gets earlier and earlier every year.
Yeah. So he calls Champ over and says, like, I've got a couple girls and we'll go to the dance. So Champ comes over in a full suit. Like, and so he's wearing this suit, and he's such a goofy looking kid. Anyway, so then to put him in a full suit for the whole movie, it's pretty hilarious. It's pretty hilarious. But they set it up that, I guess Zach set it up. He called R.L. Stine's house and claimed to be the police and said he needed to come down to the station. And then he and Champ break in through the cellar where there are bear traps.
Lots of bear traps
bear
laid out
traps
down there, yeah.
I'm not exactly sure why.
I think by the end of the movie, that might be why. Like their protection for him, not about people coming in, but about things getting out. Also, who would do that? You know how dangerous those bear traps are?
Right. Yeah.
You'll shatter your leg and permanently injure yourself
break
if you
your
just
leg.
come downstairs and. But yeah, he makes his way through the bear traps, and I am sure there are tons of little Easter eggs down there with all the detritus that's sitting around. I know there's a cuckoo clock that pops out at him that references one of R.L. Stine's stories and whatnot. But they make it through the basement, and they come up into the house. Now, it's really funny to me that the conceit here is that R.L. Stine and his daughter there move around a lot, like every few years or every couple years or something like that. Like they're always on the move. But when you look at this house, it looks like they are set up and have been living in there for centuries.
Yeah.
It's got all this antique furniture in there. It's your classic, almost like a spooky mansion type setup with things, including what they come across is a bookshelf that lights up and is filled with manuscripts. Bound manuscripts, all of them with the same just plain black cover and taped on the side.
And handwritten titles.
Yeah. There's a lot of care put into these books, including having his name stamped at the bottom of everyone, R.L. Stine. But when it came down to the title, he had to handwrite it on, and they're all locked.
These are all Goosebumps manuscripts.
What's he doing with a bunch of kids' books?
But these are kids' books. Okay, kids' books help you fall asleep. These books keep you up all night.
Okay.
R.L. Stine, whatever happened to that guy?
That's a good question. Like, is he still writing? Do you know?
Yeah, he's still writing. He's still doing. He's been a writer since forever, even before the Goosebumps. You know, the Goosebumps books, because I was very curious about this. He was almost 50 when he started writing the Goosebumps books, and then he pumped out like 63 of them, and plus some spin-off series. And you know, normally writers who do this kind of thing, like even the big writers, will have ghostwriters. The Nancy Drew and Hardy Boy books were written by so many different people just under one pen name. But R.L. Stine literally sat down and wrote every single one of these books. He's super prolific. And before he started writing the Goosebumps books, he was writing for television. Do you remember a Nickelodeon show called Eureka's Castle?
Vaguely. I don't think I watched it, but the name sounds familiar.
The late 80s and stuff. He created that show and wrote most of the material for it and was writing humor books for kids and always kids stuff, it seems like. He got into writing these Goosebumps things at the request of a publisher who I think wanted to start this series, and that just really, really took off. 65 books. I mean, can you imagine?
No.
The guy apparently was at his height here at this era. And this would have been from the 92 to 90. I mean, this was right when we were in high school, and I think that's why it just kind of bypassed us. But it was like 92 to 95 or 96. At his height, he was making $40 million a year.
Oh, my gosh.
You believe it?
He's so widely known, and his properties are used all the time. Like, Netflix is still doing those Fear Street movies. There's a new one coming out soon, I
Is there
think.
really? I'm happy to hear that, because I liked the first three. I really did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so there's all these books, and they're all locked. But there's a key under a bell jar, just in plain sight. Like, lock that up, bro.
It's so dumb.
So they get it out, and they pop open one of the books, and it like falls to the floor. And then Hannah appears, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And they're like, "We thought you were in trouble." And I don't know. She's like, "You didn't open a book, did you?" And he's like, "Yeah, but it's fine." And he picks it up, and it starts to like match. I really liked this sequence. Like the letters start to like bleed off of the page into the air, and then they are kind of like smoke. And
this was awesome.
And then they start to, it was really cool. And it eventually forms the Abominable Snowman, because that's the book that they opened. And it's not great CGI. I mean, it looks fine, but it looks...
okay.
It doesn't look like a real thing in the room.
I know what you mean. It's earlier CGI. It's not that early. It's 2015, for God's sakes. But it's still not... I read that this was Sony Picture Animation's first film that wasn't an animated film.
Correct.
So I assume that their animated film division did a lot of this. And so I assume that they didn't have as much experience with doing something that was a mix.
Yeah.
So probably getting that mix of live action animation right, it probably was a bit of an earlier effort for them.
Well, and maybe it was a choice. Maybe it was a choice to make it a little bit more cartoony. Maybe if it had been too real, it wouldn't have been...
Well, that's true.
For kids.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever. It's an abominable snowman. Okay, so, I don't know what chases them and stuff, and then it busts out of the house, like it busts like the whole side out of the house, and then Jack Black comes back. He's like, "See, I told you something bad would happen."
Well, I just think it's funny because the minute they leave the house and they go to, I guess they follow the path of destruction or something. It's just so hilarious because it's the middle of the night. So of course they want to situate at night because it's more fun. And I guess the whole neighborhood, they're just very, very heavy sleepers because this abominable snowman has apparently stomped through the whole neighborhood, led a path of cars with their alarms going off. Nobody ever pops out of a house to see what's going on, and leads them somehow to the ice rink. Of course, the abominable snowman is going to make a beeline for the ice rink, right?
Yeah.
At the minute they pop into this old ice rink, I'm thinking, oh, this is cute. So I wonder how many different little set pieces are we going to have around town? Is there going to be the arcade? Is there going to be, obviously, we're going to be at the school at some point. We got to end up at the carnival, probably at the end. And so I just in my head, I was kind of checking off the boxes of all the different places they could go. And by golly, they hit almost all of them. Mm-hmm. But it's at the ice rink, and so she opens the book and she gets close enough to it. The whole movie feels like one big chase sequence after a while.
Yeah, it does. But it's fun. It's exciting.
Yeah. This is the beginning of it, and so they end up together getting that thing sucked back into the book because Jack Black shows up.
Right. Yeah, he's there with them. He drove them there, I think. But that's the setup is that I guess if you it's like Ghostbusters, like you get close enough to them and you open up the book and it'll like suck them back in. Yeah, the ghost trap. Before they leave the house, Jack Black monologues about what happened. Like when he was a kid, he was lonely and he didn't have any friends. And so he had to invent his own friends and he invented these monsters and he wrote about them. And then they came to life.
Because his imagination was just so vivid. Uh-huh. It's a real ego stroke for R.L. Stine, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, it's better than the real story. Well, one day I was approached by a publisher.
I suppose so.
But he has to keep them. He has to keep them locked in the books. That's the only way to be safe. They have to stay locked in the books. And also, before they leave, you see another book just pop open. Now, I'm not really sure why that is.
Yeah.
But another book just pops open.
That seemed like cheating. I didn't get that at all. If they were all locked by the key and the key was keeping him safe, and he screwed up by unlocking the book, why does this one book that just because it fell on the floor gets to pop open on its own later? But they all kind of do, I guess, don't they? It's not the only one.
Well, no, because I feel I don't remember when it happens, but you see when that book opens up, it's Night of the Living Dummy. So Slappy, the ventriloquist dummy, is out. Like I feel like Slappy's doing his own thing back at the house. Like he burns his own book. And he's like talking to, he says, Papa. He calls R.L. Stine Papa. He's like, Papa, all of your children are coming out to play. Mm-hmm. And he takes all the books. And I think he opens them.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's a little tenuous. I think he opens some of them. But then there's also a big reveal at the, like, not a reveal, but there's a big moment at the end where they open all of them.
Yeah.
So some monsters come out first.
Yeah, I guess you're right. He takes all the books and he ends up driving off. We don't get to see how the dummy drives the car, but, he's magical. He guess he can do what he wants. He drives off and leaves them to come home. And when they all get back, they find that the books are open and something's burned. He's like, oh no, this is my biggest... Basically, I think that Night of the Living Dummy was one of the most notorious of his books. Right? It's one of the most recognizable characters and covers.
I think in large part because of the TV show. I think that, and I may be wrong because I didn't watch the TV show either, but I think that Slappy was a big part of the TV show. I think. I could be making that up. But yeah, I think it's one of his most iconic ones.
Yeah.
I can picture clearly the book cover, that character is, and I think that it's an iconic character for a certain generation. I think Well, ventriloquist dummies, this isn't new. That's
No.
the thing. Like, his books aren't particularly novel, for lack of a better word. Like, they immediately when they get back, they get attacked by garden gnomes. At some point, there's a
blob.
a blob, like literally the blob.
It's literally pink and big and veiny, just like the blob is. Yeah.
And I just remember seeing those book covers, and I remember seeing all of these specific ones. I remember seeing the lawn gnomes, the giant praying mantis, the
man-eating
blob,
plant,
and
yeah, the Venus flytraps that are huge.
the Venus flytraps. I remember seeing those and just thinking, "Oh, that's cute." Like that's taming down horror for kids.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like it was for me. But it is cute. And like the aliens that freeze the cops, like there's these aliens walking. They kind of look like, not really, kind of like the Mars Attacks aliens running around like freezing people in the street and stuff. All of this is like,
It's cute.
it's cute, but it's also super fun. Like, I don't want to make it sound like it's stupid,
No.
because I didn't find it stupid at all. I was really into it. I'm like, this is fun.
Well, I mean, I think, what you and I are kind of talking about is probably why we didn't pick up the books in the first place. It's because we looked at them and we're like,
Yeah.
well, that's cute. But, I'm not going to pick up a kid's book about Frankenstein's monster or a mummy. I'm probably going to give these a pass. But when you throw them all together in this movie, like you said, like the Monster Squad or whatever, it becomes kind of fun. I've heard this movie described as sort of a cabin in the woods for kids.
Yeah, sure.
It's just all the monsters of all different kinds have been released and they're wreaking havoc, and that's fun. I really like this Garden Gnome sequence. I thought it was one of the most clever sequences in the whole movie. Because, these Garden Gnomes are made out of, they're ceramic and they're hollow. And so there's all this cuteness of where they kind of come out of the book and they assemble themselves and they're going to work like as a team doing things. And then Jack Black and the kids come home and they've got to fight them off, and they're breaking them and they're shattering them and they're chucking them in the oven and watching them burn up. But then like the pieces of them are able to reassemble.
Yeah, but they can't be killed.
Yeah, they can't be killed at all.
None of the monsters can.
Correct.
Yeah, I guess that's what the bear traps are for, but all it does is slow them down, because Hannah told the boys when they were chasing the Abominable Snowman, they can't be killed. The only thing that you can do is get them back in the book. So, and again, like you said, nobody dies in the movie. Literally nobody. Like, not even the bad guys die.
Yeah.
Like,
It's true.
if your kid gets attached to those little gnomes, he'll see them get crushed, but they just reassemble themselves and are fine.
The monsters don't seem to give a care. The people, are going to be fine. It's just that kind of movie. I love it that Slappy now goes to, I think, the only other two characters in the movie they can possibly do something to, and that's the two cops, who are apparently the only two cops on the force in the town. And they come back, and their police station, I think, is dark or whatever, and they flip on the light, and there is Slappy sitting in the chair. And immediately, of course, the cop draws her gun on him, and he looks at her, and he says my favorite line in the whole movie.
I come in peace, unarmed.
That's funny. I didn't even. I missed it.
Oh, God.
He's funny. Slappy is funny, and I do like Jack Black's performance as Slappy.
Yeah, his voice.
He's not
right?
credited. It's his voice.
And thank God that for most of it too, they didn't use CGI on Slappy. That was an honest to God puppet, and you could tell it was really good that they did it that way. I think.
Loved him. Loved that he was the primary antagonist, because basically he's leading this army of monsters, and the aliens come in and freeze the cops, and we keep kind of cutting back and forth between people. At one point we check in with Aunt Lorraine, and she hears something at her door, and she opens the door. There's a poodle there with like something on its forehead. I couldn't tell what it was,
like
a pink flower, just a pink or something. And she goes to get it water, and she comes back and it's floating, and then it like turns into an evil, like its face like monsters out. Oh, and I loved that. And I'm sure that poodle, of course it is. Everything is from the book, but it's so funny.
Yeah.
I think Zach is the one that figures out that the only way that they can solve this is if R.L. Stine writes a book about capturing all the monsters at once, and then they'll all be captured or whatever.
Yep.
And he's like, start writing, and he's like, no, I need my magic typewriter. Which again is also from one of the books. It's a typewriter that makes stories come to life or something.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason his magic typewriter is in one of the trophy cases at the school.
So was he like an alumnus of this university or something, of this school or something?
I have no idea, because you said they moved around and stuff. I missed that part too. I don't remember.
Well, she's talking.
Maybe she was lying.
When she's talking to him, they're opening up, right? She's talking to Zach, and Zach's talking to her. Her name is Hannah, right? They've got their budding cute little young love romance going, and she says to him something about how she knows how he feels about feeling alone sometimes because she has been moving around every couple years. I don't know if that means that she's been bouncing back and forth between him and the supposed mother in London, or if I thought it meant that the two of them had been moving around a lot.
So here's the deal. Like, there's a whole great scene with the werewolf that if you want to talk about it, we can, but it's very soon after that. It's when they get to the school. It happens a couple times. I think the first time they're running through a graveyard.
Yeah, cemetery. Yeah.
The moonlight shines directly on her, and she becomes like ethereal and ghost-like. And after seeing that happen a couple of times, he figures out that she's a ghost or a monster or something. And eventually he confronts R.L. Stine about it. And R.L. Stine's like, yeah, I wrote, because he was lonely or something. He just wanted a daughter. But he says she doesn't know I wrote her to believe she was a real alive girl.
Right.
So maybe all of her memories are just a construct, because she is just she's a written character.
That could be. That's true. So maybe he did grow up in that town and everybody knows him as the author, which begs the question, why is he using some weird alias, Mr. Shivers or whatever?
Right.
I don't know. I guess we don't need to look too deeply into it. But
who cares?
It is a big surprise when it's like, oh, the typewriter was at the school in the trophy case with his name on it? All right. Yeah, you're right. There's a deal with the werewolf at the supermarket, and Aunt Lorraine shows up.
I loved it. It's great. The werewolf chases them all around the supermarket, and it's fun. And again, not great as CGI, but it's a super fun scene. And
Aunt Lorraine takes one glance at R.L. Stine and seems to suddenly get so smitten, and he likewise, that it's it's like a Disney movie. Oh my God! What's your name? I'm R.L. Stine.
It's really funny.
I'm Lorraine. Okay.
And I think he starts to run away with the kids, and she says something like, do you want to exchange numbers? And he says something like, yes, but this isn't a great time. Or something like that. It's really cute.
Yeah. So supermarket with werewolf, cemetery with zombies.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. You said it's a lot of set pieces. Supermarket with the werewolf, cemetery. Then they run through a cemetery, and there are a bunch of zombies, all like thriller style. And it looks great, but it literally takes, it's like 30 seconds. Like they literally just run through the cemetery, the zombies chase them, and then they're out the other side and right into the high school.
Yep.
Where a formal dance is happening.
Is taking place.
High school dances in movies always look like so much fun. Mm-hmm. They're not like that in real life, guys.
I wish they were half as fun as they looked in the movies, that's for sure. With all the drama.
Yeah, it is not a bunch of gorgeous 20-something looking people in
their
couture
best clothes. Right. And like super expensive decorations hanging up everywhere.
An amazing like DJ
sound
and like lights. Like it looks really fun. It's really just a bunch of awkward, sweaty teenagers in a cafeteria
with some paper streamers and handmade signs.
Oh boy. It's pretty pathetic.
They have their own charms. I actually miss high school dances a lot. I used to have a lot of fun at those, but not everybody did.
No.
It could be very awkward.
You're welcome to come take my chaperoning dude want if you need to relive that experience.
As a high school student, I miss them. I don't think I'd want to be chaperoning one.
No good. Anyway, okay, so then they end up at the high school.
They take the stage.
Yeah, he does. I guess he kind of runs off on his own. For some reason, the teenagers all end up, like, in the dance. I guess their champ wants to, like, warn everybody. Like, he gets on the mic and warns them all about something bad happening or something, and they don't believe him. But then some kid is standing up looking out the window, and he starts shouting, "Oh my gosh, there's something ripping something's head off," or I don't know. And everybody thinks that he's joking in response to their announcement, but then does the praying mantis bust in? Is that what happens?
Yep, and now all hell breaks loose. In the meantime, Jack Black's character, R.L. Stine, has his typewriter, and he needs to sneak away to write. And what better place for him to go is in the theater, where he opens the door, looks at the stage, and they're set up for a production of The Shining.
I didn't catch that. Did you catch that? I read about it, but I
No,
didn't
it said
notice.
The Shining in big letters over the stage.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and he goes, "Oh my
see
God, that was so funny. That was so funny." Oh my God, that was my second favorite part of the whole movie. The first one was that line, I'm unarmed, from the ventriloquist dummy. The second thing was him sitting down at a typewriter on a stage production of The Shining.
Well, his animosity towards Stephen King, like there are like 2 or 3 different jokes.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, but also that The Shining is about, a guy who's trying to write a story.
A
as
writer.
Well, so.
Right.
And I love the conceit. I'm just going to go with it. We all know it's crazy, but this guy can plunk out, because he's like, it's got to be a real Goosebumps story. I can't just write 3 sentences and they say the end. It's got to be a full story with a twist in it and that whole deal. And within the course of 5 minutes, this guy has pumped out all but maybe the last 3 sentences of his story.
Slappy shows up there and they have a confrontation, but Slappy has also gathered all of the monsters outside the high school, like on the football field. Mm-hmm. And that's when they also open all the rest of the books. So there's literally like a horde of them in there. I would like to watch it again and just pause that scene where they show the whole horde of them, because it is like Cabin in the Woods there at the end when it's just a whole sea of villains, but they're all specific. Like a killer clown stands out, but oh gosh, there are just so many, and they all attack the school. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what happens with Jack Black and Slappy in the theater.
Slappy confronts Jack Black and leaps up onto his typewriter to interrupt his writing, and then slams the lid of the typewriter down on his fingers, which apparently breaks all of his fingers, and that's going to prevent him from being able to continue his story. I think the kids burst in, somehow the dummy disappears, and they run away with the typewriter, but Jack Black's like, eventually like, you've got to finish the story or I'm going to dictate it to you, and that's kind of how it goes. But you can't forget the moment where Champ gets his girl too, in the hallway.
Oh yeah, he saves her from the werewolf, right? Oh God, that was so cute.
This girl who we only saw in the very beginning.
Hi, Taylor.
Hi, Chump.
Did she just call you chump?
Yes, indeed, she did. My real name is Champ. But she's never talked to me before, so we're making progress.
And here she's getting attacked by the werewolf. The werewolf has her cornered, and Champ, in this big bout of uncharacteristic courage, leaps up onto his back. And I'm thinking, how in the world is this guy going to fight off this werewolf?
Yeah.
And he bites into the werewolf's neck, and the werewolf completely freaks out, becomes very incapacitated, and sort of scurries off. And I'm like, what was that? And she pulls him aside, and he's like, opens his mouth. He goes, silver fillings.
Yeah, he's got like at least one whole silver tooth. He's like, yeah, when I was a kid, I didn't brush my teeth for a whole year. Oh boy, that was really funny.
And then they kiss because she is so overtaken by him suddenly and his act of bravery that she's ready to mount him right there in the hallway. So.
Oh gosh, yeah, that was sweet. And he's funny. That kid, that actor is really, really funny.
He really is.
And so
endearing,
so charming. I was so happy to see him get his kiss. That was sweet. But then, okay, so the monsters are all converging, so they have to figure out a way to get out of there. Like Jack Black is like, Slappy just wants me. I'll go out there and you guys, the rest of you can get away. And Zach's like, no, I have a plan. And you explain the plan, because it's a little fuzzy to me.
I'm not sure if I looked away from the screen at this moment. I feel like I must have, because the next thing I know, they're driving away in a school bus. Jack Black is going some other direction. And then the monsters have attacked another school bus and got down on its side.
It's a mislead. It's an intentional mislead, because like it looks like Jack Black is driving a bus away.
Right.
And I guess he is, but the bus that the first bus that the monsters think is Jack Black, they attack it and it's empty. there's not even a driver. Right? I don't
Yeah.
even think there's a driver. But it drives a long way.
It drives a long way. It doesn't have a driver. They leap onto it, and when it's kind of on its side, and so when I think it's the werewolf opens the door in it, they can peer inside and see what is in there is some kind of weird Rube Goldberg type contraption that apparently these kids were able to rig up in 2 minutes.
In seconds.
Yeah.
Bomb.
That explodes.
It's a huge bomb. Like it's a huge explosion that blows up tons of the monsters. Again, they just regenerate, so it doesn't really matter. But it was a decoy. It was a decoy bus, and the rest of them really are on a bus.
But also, like you had said earlier, in the way the monsters assemble, I like the way that they deassembled that way as well. Like when it blows them up, they all kind of explode into ink, which then just, is on the ground. And then, of course, that ink just reassembles itself back into the monsters. But it's so cool. Like, it ties really well into the theme of the words coming to life from the page.
Yeah.
But also makes this movie extremely nonviolent for kids, right? There's no blood.
Right.
No bits of monster going anywhere even. It's a neat conceit, and it works.
It kind of subtly reinforces that they're just make-believe.
Yeah.
This is just pretend. This is just imagination. Nobody's getting hurt. It's fine.
True. And also that they're immortal, like the words on the page in our imaginations, they're immortal, you can't kill these things. It also adds this element of what in the world are they going to do to it that I really liked, You see the big bomb go off, and I thought for a minute, oh, now they only have Slappy to deal with, because Slappy wasn't there.
Right.
But no, they all reassemble, and I was like, oh, shit, no, there's still full-on horde coming at them, so...
Yeah, so they go back to the carnival for the big final showdown, I guess.
They run into the funhouse first, and they're all inside the funhouse, and Jack Black is dictating the rest of the story to Zach, and he's typing furiously away. But then Slappy immediately appears in the funhouse in all these different mirrors, and at one point there's kind of a superimposition where, the way the reflection in the mirror works, it looks like half of R.L. Stine and half of Slappy go together in the same person.
I found that hilarious. They're treating it like a psychological thriller in this moment, and the way that it's shot, that's what it looks like. And I don't remember any of the lines, but I just remember it's Jack Black talking to himself.
Yes,
and honest, I actually like that component of it too. He really is talking to himself. This is his creation,
It's a little heady for the kids, but it's kind of a nice little throw in there to make it more interesting for the adults, I think,
But it's kind of like Slappy, and I like that part that you mentioned where they do kind of, it's not split screen. It's meant to be part of the illusion of the mirrors in the funhouse, but their faces are... one half is Jack Black, one half is Slappy. It was cool. I liked it.
He makes some comments earlier, and I don't remember the context and exactly when he said them or why he said them, but he does make some allusions to the fact that Slappy was his most, the character he related to the most, or the one that he thought was the most like him, or there's something along those lines that is said more than once earlier in the story. This is going to be his nemesis because this is sort of like the dark side of him, or the character in his book that is able to say the things he can't as a person. I don't know. But yeah, it was a nice image. A lot of this kind of detail put into a movie that didn't require it. That's nice.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I think that's the writing is excellent fan service. Mm-hmm. And I think that's fantastic. But yeah, I said they had to get to higher ground. Now I remember the reason, because Slappy opens the Blob book. Mm-hmm. And so the Blob, fills the whole funhouse and starts coming out of the funhouse. And so the kids say they have to get to higher ground. So they climb the Ferris wheel. But because Jack Black tells them go, and he tells Zach to finish the book. He's like, I don't remember.
Yeah.
And he's like, just finish it.
Let's do it.
And he runs off to what? I don't know. Confront Slappy, I guess.
He just stands out. I was a little puzzled by this, but he just literally stands outside and lets the Blob overtake him. And he kind of pops his head out of it, so he's not dying in there, but he just succumbed to it. And I'm not sure if that was supposedly a distraction or why he did that.
I know. I just have, in my notes, I just have the Blob eats Stine. And then it carries on. The kids climb up the Ferris wheel. The monsters all converge. He finishes the book. and locks it.
It instantly binds it, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, that was hilarious. Like he just stuck it in binding and it was done. Like, look. Oh my gosh, it was funny. But then the mantis sends the Ferris wheel rolling, which is fun, but they would have been dead.
That would all have died 100 times over in this rolling Ferris wheel.
I feel like they keep showing the kids as it's rolling and rolling, like it rolls like far. They conveniently never show close-ups when the kids would be at the bottom.
Right.
Because they couldn't, because they would be dead.
Yeah. Of course.
Oh, God. But I guess when they land, they're going to, the monsters are coming and they're going to open the book, and Zach is hesitant and Hannah's like, it's okay, I know. So it turns out she really knows that she's just a story, and she tells him to open the book, but he won't, so she does.
Mm-hmm.
And the monsters all get sucked in, and he grabs hold of her, and and I love this. I love, a big, all the bad guys get sucked into a
portal,
a vortex at the end of the movie. Oh, I love it.
Uh-huh.
I love it. And gosh, this is so Monster Squad. I didn't even think about it until now. Like, he's holding on to her just like Phoebe holds on to Frankenstein at the end, and she's starting to get sucked in, and Slappy gets sucked in, and he says, Slappy's not happy. See you in your dreams. Oh, gosh.
That was great.
And then Hannah, oh, gosh, sorry. I'm just excited. It's so funny.
Go on.
Hannah tells Zach that she'll always be in his imagination. And she kisses him, and then she gets sucked in. And then everything is just back to normal.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea how much time is supposed to have passed. Like, it almost seems like it's the next day.
Right. That's how it's almost presented, really. They're all back in school, and R.L. Stine is the new English teacher. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And he walks down the hall, and he passes by a guy who walks by. And he goes, "Oh, hey."
Oh, wait, real quick.
Oh.
While he's in class, he's the new English teacher, and I love the line. He said, every story, it has 3 components: the beginning, the middle, and the twist.
Not what I was expecting.
I loved that line.
Yeah.
No, not me either. I loved that line. I thought that was such a clever, fun line.
It
I
was
liked
funny.
Jack Black's delivery of that particular line.
It was good.
But yeah, go ahead about Mr. Black, the drama teacher.
Oh, yeah, he just walks by the drama teacher, says, "Oh, hey, Mr. Black." And Mr. Black looks up as he's walking by and goes, "Oh, hey, Mr. Stine." And it turns out that's R.L. Stine's cameo. So Jack Black is calling R.L. Stine Mr. Black, and R.L. Stine is calling Jack Black Mr. Stine. It's kind of funny.
It is funny. I was looking away from the screen when I heard that line.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and but I heard it, and I turned back to the screen, and they had already gone on with the scene, Zach and Jack Black talking together, and I said, I bet you money that was R.L. Stine that he said, "Hey, Mr. Black," to. So I rewound it, and I saw the guy, and like, I don't know what R.L. Stine looks like, but I saw him walk by, and I'm like, that's him. Like that.
It's
that
gotta
is
be.
such the cameo at the end of the real guy. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so they talk about Hannah, and Jack Black says, she'll always be in your mind and in your heart, but also over there. And he points back, and she's standing there, and Jack Black, as R.L. Stine, says, yeah, I wrote her back. Todd, I almost cried.
Are you serious?
Yes. Yes, I almost cried. I thought it was so sweet.
That's cute. It was sweet. He holds up his book, and then he lights the book on fire. So I guess she can't get sucked back into it anymore. And then immediately drops it into a garbage can and closes the lid on it. And my first thought was, that's going to put out the fire, bro. You need to let that burn a little longer. But yeah, she's back, and her and Zach embrace, and that's the end.
Well, but then Stine is just walking. His Magic Typewriter is back in the showcase, and he's walking by it, and we see and hear a click of the typewriter, and he stops and he starts looking at it, and it starts. I don't remember if it starts to type or...
Yeah, it's typing.
It's typing, and it says, "The Invisible Boy's Revenge." And then he's like, "Yeah, you forgot about me," or something. And the Invisible Boy, I guess, attacks him. And then that's the end. And the credits roll, and it rolls over artwork by the guy who did all the cover artwork. I mean, it's the R.L. Stine imagery, but...
So how much sense does that make, though? I mean, wouldn't the Invisible Boy have gotten sucked in with all the other monsters? Like, what?
One would think. I don't know.
Was there some loophole in the end of the story that Zach wrote that excluded the Invisible Boy?
I don't think we should overthink it.
All
I
right.
think it was just a stinger. It's just a stinger.
You're right. Fair enough. I just thought maybe they accounted for it somewhere and I missed it.
That moment where I almost cried almost didn't happen because they filmed that she didn't come back, but he just happened to meet a girl that looked strikingly like her. But test audiences didn't like it, so they reshot it with her actually coming back. And I like it that way. It's sweet. It's good for kids. It's cute.
It is good for kids.
I liked this movie. I really did. Like, I really enjoyed it. And I'm glad because I couldn't find it streaming free anywhere. So I bought it. So I'm glad if I hadn't liked it, I would have been really pissed off that I paid $8 for it.
Well, I mean, everybody else seemed to like it too. It got very, very favorable reviews from audiences. It seemed like the critics all said, yeah, this is really nothing groundbreaking, but it's super cute and it's good for kids and it's a nice little nod to R.L. Stine and all of his work. And it did really well as far as money goes and all around the world. Enough to spawn a sequel, Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween, which will probably do another Halloween season, I'm sure.
Maybe.
I don't know. That movie apparently only has a brief cameo with Jack Black's character in it, so I guess R.L. Stine didn't end up becoming a central figure in the sequel. So
Yeah, I think he shows up at the end.
that'll be a little disappointing, honestly. But anyway, yeah, no, I enjoyed it too. For the same reasons you did. It was just a nice, fun, cute little movie. Nice little popcorn kids movie, something the whole family could sit down and watch. And like I said earlier, perfect to kick off your Halloween, I think.
Yeah, me too. And I'm glad you picked it because I wouldn't have, because it, like we said at the very beginning, it's not specifically set at Halloween, but it may as well be. It feels so much like a Halloween movie. I mean, it's definitely a fun one for this time of year to get you in the mood.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it with a friend. Find us online. 2 Guys in a Chainsaw Podcast is all you need to Google to get to our website. Find our Patreon at patreon.com/chainsaw podcast. And of course, our website, chainsawhorror.com. Leave us a comment there. Let us know what you thought. And let us know what you're planning to do for Halloween. It'll be a lot of fun. That's something we'll certainly be talking about behind the scenes with the patrons. So if you want to get in on some of that conversation, consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com/chainsaw podcast. All right. Happy kickoff to the Halloween season, everyone. Until next time, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With 2 Guys and a Chainsaw.